All right, Derek, I've been wanting to have this conversation. I'm looking forward to it. So a lot of people talk to me about ADUs, which for the crowd, accessory dwelling units, as a huge opportunity in real estate investing. You're the ADU guy. I want to do a sort of crash course on this topic, assuming people don't know anything about it. And the first question I had, if I were a rookie here, there's so many strategies in real estate investing. You can buy duplexes, and you can buy multi-units, you can buy single-family houses. I wanted to start with, like, what's the basic benefit? Like, what's the opportunity you see 2024 in investing in ADUs compared to everything else? What's the big value you see, the opportunity?
I'd say the biggest value in the long run is to provide more needed infill housing for our tenants.
Yep.
My competitive advantage is putting myself in the shoes of a tenant, and I would like to say that this is a great product for adding more needed housing, and that's first and foremost.
Can you explain what an ADU is? I said accessory dwelling unit, but just for people to imagine, like, what this is, it's a little different than maybe some other products they might have looked at.
Yeah, so similar to what we used to build 100 years ago, which was called maybe a carriage house, an accessory dwelling unit is a small secondary unit that's subordinate to a primary house. And it could be a standalone unit in the backyard. It could be on an alley. It could be a basement that was legally converted to a second unit. It could be an attic conversion. It's a secondary legal unit on a property that was primarily originally designated for a single family house.
Okay, so one example, there's a lot of variety here, but you have a 2,000 square foot house in the front. They've got some space in the backyard where right now it's just a yard, or maybe it's a driveway, and you build an extra unit there. That's one example. And you rent that out, carriage house, granny flat, ADU, lots of different names for it. Got it. All right. I want to go back to the reason you said this is an opportunity, which I love that you started with the tenants and worked backwards, because that's the value we add to the society, to our communities. A lot of in the news all the time is about we don't have enough housing. Housing's not affordable, especially in the West Coast, East Coast, big cities, but really everywhere in the US. People, if you're a tenant, finding a good quality rental that's within your budget is just incredibly hard right now. So how does this fit that need compared to going out and building 100 brand new houses, for example? Why is this a little different story?
The advantage here is that we're able to build a house on land that's already owned. So the way we build these cheaper, and not just us, but anybody can do this, is taking a property where you already own the land and the infrastructure is already in place. So we already have sidewalks and streets and public safety and street lights, and we're basically plopping down a unit in an area that already has the infrastructure.
Right.
A good example of that is if we were going to build a new multifamily unit or a new single family house, we would have to tie into utilities out in the street. For example, a sewer line maybe 8 feet deep in the middle of a paved road. That could be $10,000 or $20,000 to tap into. By using an accessory dwelling unit strategy, you can tee off the private lateral of the house. So all the utilities are hundreds of dollars to connect as opposed to thousands of dollars. So there's this really big cost savings. You own the land, the utilities are way cheaper. And as cities start to push this more and more, we're going to hopefully add more inventory over time and therefore put downward pressure on rents and give tenants a break they need.
Yeah, just as an example, if you had 2,000 houses in a city, you could go out in the suburbs and build 2,000 or 500 new houses, right? Mm-hmm. You'd have to build a new sewer line. The city would have to build a road. You'd have to widen that road. As a developer, I've developed properties a little bit. You'd have to go and buy the land. You'd have to zone it. You'd have to get it. There's just so many steps to develop a property. What you're saying is so much simpler. Is like you already own the house. The property's already there. The land's already there. The sewer line, the utilities are already there. You can tap into that. And then, so just, I'm going to try to make this with numbers like real. Let's say we build an ADU for $100,000. Mm-hmm. Maybe a house in that same neighborhood, if you bought it from scratch, maybe some numbers there. Maybe that's a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 cost. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is accurate. Yep.
Yeah. So maybe the ADU, just to give somebody an example, what might, in your area in Oregon, if you had a $100,000 ADU, what could that rent for in finished product?
Yeah, great question. So we're building new standalone detached ADUs right now, around 600 square feet for $100,000, and the gross rent on those are anywhere from $1,500 to $1,800, and that's a pretty good average across the West Coast. And this, I would like to add that the strategy doesn't work everywhere. Where ADUs are allowed and where legislation is producing more and more really good laws to allow ADUs, mm-hmm. It's in areas with really expensive rents.
Yeah.
So this isn't a strategy that we would normally use in counties or outside of urban growth boundaries, but in the cities where rents are high, it's going to be the most affordable option. But a good price point, West Coast at least, is anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 for a 1-bedroom, and then $2,000 to $3,000 a month for a 2-bedroom.
I want to go back to the city zoning and the laws and how that can be an impediment. So we'll just kind of set that aside. But just to get back to the economics of it, so you build a $100,000 property, you have a $1,500 to $1,800 rent for a 1-bedroom. From the tenant's perspective, that same neighborhood, they might be paying what, $3,000 for a house if they had to rent the house?
Yeah, at least. And again, putting ourselves in the tenant's shoes, a lot of these tenants that are looking for a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, small detached unit, they're not looking to rent a large house. They don't want roommates. They want to live in their own unit. So it's a third of the price, and it's also what they want.
Yep. So let's flip the hats over. You're an investor. You're going to try to build this ADU. You own this house already. Maybe you're renting it out already. For you to spend $100,000 to get $1,500 to $1,800 in rent can be pretty good numbers, right? I mean, and I know there's some more math that we'd have to do there to figure it out, but typically is that a pretty good return on investment for you as an investor when you do that?
Yeah, that would be about the minimum. And again, not to keep going back to the tenant, but we're giving them a high demand, low supply product under market rate while driving a good yield. So a 15% cash on cash return, say we build it for $100,000, it rents for $1,500. That's gross. That's with zero leverage. So if we're able to leverage a loan for that product, I mean, that number only goes up.
Yeah. So we've kind of established the basics. This is a good deal for tenants. There's a huge societal problem that we need more rental supply. This is a way to do that at an affordable level. From an investment standpoint, there's some opportunity here. There's some skin on the bone, so to speak, that you can make an investment. So I wanted to show people this is worth their while to dig into. This is a really big opportunity, particularly in urban areas, particularly in places that are kind of built out with high cost. So I want to get into some examples. I watched the talk you did here at the Zuber conference, and you did a great job of just talking about the different ways you could try to do this for lower costs, because this is the practical side is to do this, you got to come up with the money. And maybe we could just start with, I like the example you gave, the simplest way to do an ADU is to convert a space that already has a roof, already has walls. So maybe, can you take me through that example of using an existing structure of a house, not even building a separate unit and just trying to let's talk about that example of an ADU.
Yeah, great. We would start with the most affordable option for an accessory dwelling unit, which is what I call the house hack on steroids. We would look for a single family house that has some kind of split floor plan that's going to easily allow us to convert usually the master bedroom into a single legal permitted unit. And the reason is because the bathroom is the most expensive piece. So if we can find a section of the house that already has a full bathroom and the sewer line run, we can easily put in a one-wall kitchen and make a 1-bedroom apartment for anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000. So if you're a first-time home buyer and you're thinking of putting maybe 10% down, I would consider maybe 5% down and save that other little bit of cash to convert this part of your house to a legal rental unit. And a couple advantages over just rent by the room roommate situation is you have privacy. So everybody says, why would I buy an ADU or convert an ADU when I could just go buy a duplex? And this strategy is basically just doing the same thing for cheaper.
Yeah. One of the challenges I've seen students have with duplexes is not a lot of places have them. I mean, the number of single family houses out there is enormous compared to existing duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. So I love house hacking. I did it to start. So many people started with house hacking, but how do you get into that strategy in a city that has lots of single family zoning? What you're saying is you can find a particular house where, number one, the law, the local legislation lets you do it. So not all zoning allows that. And I want to ask you about that. But number two, how would you identify a property? You said it has a master bedroom, maybe that could split off. If people are looking on the MLS or they're sending out letters, what kind of signs would you look for a house that has that potential to do that kind of sectioning off like that?
Yeah, great question. I would say any detached space that has a bathroom is where I start.
Okay.
I always use keyword searches and I look for bonus rooms. But the main piece that we're thinking of is how do we create privacy for our tenant?
Yeah.
So I don't want the space that we're looking to convert to share a wall with another bedroom. That's the easiest way to describe it. So if there's a master bedroom that's not attached, not sharing a wall with another living space, that's going to be definitely top of the list. Another thing that we're looking for is garages that have plumbing in them already, because that's going to be a really cheap and affordable, quick conversion.
Okay, so if somebody were making like a MLS filter or a marketing filter, they could start looking for bonus room keywords. They could start looking for garages and look at the pictures of the garage to see if there's plumbing there. they can start looking for bathrooms and extra spaces. So that seems pretty self-explanatory. They can kind of get a little system to look for that.
Easily, yeah.
The other thing, so the physical property is one thing, but then you mentioned the zoning. I'm thinking about my own town, for example, Clemson, South Carolina, which is kind of a mini urban area. It's in the southeast, but we have certain laws that do allow ADUs. Like, so we have a positive. If you live in a residential zoning, you can build a 700 square foot ADU, and if you live there as an occupant, you can rent it out. So, but we have a regulation that you can't, in these single family zoning, if you moved out of the property, you couldn't rent them both as a duplex. So that's one specific example. My town would be difficult to buy a single family, convert it to a duplex in that single family zoning, and then keep it as a duplex. You couldn't do that if you just didn't live there. That's one specific example, but I'm wondering if you could speak to maybe to what would be the ideal kind of legislative or kind of local codes backdrop that would give you like, all right, that's a town I want to go invest in. This is an ideal ADU kind of setup from a legal standpoint.
Yeah, wonderful. So I would tell everybody that doesn't have good ADU legislation in their state to go to public meetings, to write your senators, to write your state representatives. They actually listen. Like, that's what their job is to talk to their constituents and ask what they want. I would look at the National Model Code, which was written by AARP. And the industry best practices right now are in Oregon, California, Washington, and Montana. And all four of those states pretty much carbon copied the AARP National Model Code. And to your point of the residency requirement, we say there's two poison pills in ADU legislation. And one of them is off-street parking requirements, which those four states I mentioned do not have, and also a residency requirement. So this doesn't work in every state yet. But what we're seeing is more and more states and cities every day adopting industry best practices from these West Coast states that have overarching legislation. But the best piece of advice I would give our viewers and our listeners here would be to build a relationship with your local planning and zoning department. I tell people to call, email, and actually, if you can, physically go into the office and say, hey, I'm looking to add needed infill housing with the ADU strategy. Can you show me a zoning map in our city or county where this is allowed? Can you tell me where I can go to a public meeting and get on the agenda to maybe speak in front of our city council to show where this is working in other states and why our city should adopt it as well? That's where the change comes from, is grassroots, real people showing up at meetings and saying, hey, look, it's working over here. Why aren't we doing it? And then I'll just wrap that up really quickly with the residency requirement. What we do in states that don't allow the non-owner occupied second unit is we don't put in a full stove with a hood, so therefore it doesn't qualify as a kitchen, and therefore it's not a dwelling. We just do a wet bar with 110 volt countertop plug-in appliances, so we can kind of get around that space and still have a legal rentable unit.
The point is every local law is going to be a little bit different. There's some kind of broad strokes that'll be similar. You might be in one of those states with the really friendly laws. That's great. If you're in a state with a poison pill, that doesn't mean you're going to not be able to do it. You're going to have to get creative to fit the letter of the law. But I would also add, like, even in my location, which is not an ADU friendly, I would say as some of these other states are, if you go to the duplex zoning areas, if you go to triplex zoning, so there's understanding your zoning map, I guess is what I'm trying to say, is one of the most valuable things I have ever done. When you and I were talking, you've been on the planning commission. I was on the planning commission in my local town. It was a lot of trouble and a lot of meetings I had to go to, but I had a PhD education in planning and zoning. I had a zoning map on my wall. I had to study it. I had to learn it. I don't know why more investors don't study their zoning maps. It's like a treasure map. It basically tells you where every opportunity is in your city, with ADUs in particular. If you could figure out and have that meeting with your zoning person and say, tell me where the easiest spot to do an ADU is and which zoning there, they could kind of help you figure it out. And then there's probably most of the investors in town might not know that. And then you could go market to those properties, find them, buy them. There's a gold mine of opportunities, I guess. Have you found that to be similar in some cities?
I couldn't have said it better myself, Coach. It's the rule book of how we make money in real estate, and nobody reads it. Okay, everybody wants to know the secret sauce and how we do what we do, and there's no secret. It's nobody has the discipline to do the simple thing, which is read your zoning code, become an expert in it. It's not hundreds of pages. It's usually 10 pages or less. Meet the decision makers. It's a relationship business. Understand your code, and you can really leverage back to how you opened up. What's the advantage of an ADU? It's to give tenants a good, clean, safe place to live. But behind that, it's also a way to add value and cash flow as an investor in a market today where nothing cash flows. And we have to understand our planning and zoning code to be able to force this appreciation and add these units.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've gotten my side hobby is being kind of a go-to citizen at my city council meetings and a think tank kind of person. So I'm all in on that idea, not just because it's an advantage as an investor, but I just think it's fun. You know, as I've gotten further in my career, I love the idea of like trying to make my community better. Like it frustrates me when there's a problem like this that's not being solved. And with one stroke of the pen, our city council could change one little thing that would open up 1,000 new affordable units in our town and they wouldn't have to spend any money. Like here it is. All these investors and entrepreneurs are willing to do this. This one law is getting in the way. I'll give you one. I'm talking a lot on this, but I'll give you one example. I own a triplex and it is grandfathered in the single family zone of my hometown in Clemson. If the grandfathering rules in my city say that if that were to get torn down by a tornado, like if a tornado came through town, if a fire came, if it got destroyed more than 50% of the value of that property, I couldn't rebuild it as a triplex. That's just that's the grandfathering rules. I might be able to go to a planning commission meeting, get special permission, but there's a bunch of those little kind of old ways of preserving the neighborhood, but that's the affordable housing in that neighborhood. Every other house in that neighborhood is a $2,000, $3,000 rental, $700 to $1 million property. And here we have these, regular, small, triplex rentals right in the heart of that. Mm-hmm. And one little law doesn't allow it. So it's frustrating, but it's kind of fun on the other side of that to be articulate about it and try to learn about it and do what you said of being an advocate for the concept. Yeah. And yes, you can make money with it, but you can improve your community. You can make things better. So it's kind of a monologue there, but I think it's a cool thing to study. You can change your community where you live for the better.
Yeah. We call our business model actually capitalism with compassion. Yeah. And it's just as you said, it's how do we provide a needed product? How do we make a living doing it and feel good doing the right thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take a segue there. You and I were talking before this interview about your own story. Like what got you so interested in ADUs and doing this and being an advocate for rentals? I know that's a big part of your own story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I grew up with a single mom on Section 8 housing, moving around from crappy apartment to crappy apartment. And I knew really, really young. I mean, I was 8 or 10 years old and I knew I was going to be a builder and I was going to provide housing for people. Wow. And I started an apprenticeship when I was 15, working full time. I got my contractor's license when I was 18 years old. And I've been doing this for almost 30 years professionally. Wow. And it really does stem back to my own housing insecurities and wanting to do better, to wanting to give people a better, safer, cleaner product at a better price. And so now my mission is to hopefully influence at least 1 million ADUs in my lifetime. And as far as my own portfolio, we're building, we're growing, we keep all of our units, we've never sold anything. And at the end of my life, the plan is to give them all away, to give them back to the people. And it's really, that is a jet fuel for my mission because development's hard. Like I don't want people to think that development's easy and building housing is easy. A lot of people think they're building housing in our industry when they're just improving housing that already exists. But to actually create new housing and bring it up out of the ground is a task. And so by keeping in line with my goals and the focus of giving these all away, that's how we're able to get up every morning and keep going when everybody's kicking you in the shins.
Yeah, and you've done having the leverage of your own platform with ADU Guy and social media and YouTube. That's what a cool way to leverage your passion, your mission, your knowledge. Because you have this one knowledge and you can help people. You can consult, you do consulting, but to be able to add this idea and plant this idea in thousands on this podcast, there'll be tens of thousands of people listening to it, and then they can, a few of those people are going to go plant their own seeds. I mean, that's cool. Isn't that,
it's amazing. It's amazing. If I can just plug our system really quickly, it's all free. We don't have a book, we don't have a course, we don't sell anything, we don't have an email list. You'll never hear from me. We really want to help you. And what we've done is, as opposed to thinking, well, we'll just do 1,000 units of our own, we want to help 1,000 people get their first unit. So what we do on our YouTube channel is we have a playlist called How to Build an ADU with Cost Breakdown. And there's a 17 video series of us literally building a house from the ground up. I mean, I'm on the excavator, cutting the pad, we're connecting the plumbing, we're literally building it with our hands. Yeah. And we go through the whole process and what it costs. And then if you go to thataduguy.com, under the resources tab, you can actually get the plans for free. So you can watch us build the whole thing with cost breakdown. You can go get the plan set and build it yourself. Not that everybody is going to build a house but you'll at least understand the process and what you're paying your contractor for. So we're trying to leverage stuff we've already done, mistakes we've already made, open source it to other average people like us to help with this, plan of building more housing.
Super generous, amazing. I've watched a bunch of your videos. I'm a big fan. I think getting in the weeds. I try to do the same thing on the bookkeeping, the maintenance. That the details matter, and so having the blueprints in there and having I remember one you were like in the jackhammer, like jackhammering up the sidewalk, and like you're doing the thing, you're doing the actual work, which is so cool. So
yeah, we do a lot of the work. It's not the greatest and best use of my time to be connecting sewer lines, but that's still what brings me joy. And I have a lot of high level friends that say, "Why are you still on the job site?" And I tell them because that's what makes me happy. I'm an artist.
Yeah. You're the finished product has a story behind it because you did that thing. You knew every piece of it. So I admire that. I think that's so cool. I think a lot of people listening to this, we gave them one example of kind of that $30,000 to $50,000 sort of cut your teeth on an ADU if you can find a property like that. I want to plan a couple more like templates in people's heads. We got this one. You find a single family house, you carve off a master bedroom, something else with a kind of low hanging fruit. If you can't find something like that, can you give me a couple other templates or examples of some ADUs, other ways you can use an ADU on a property?
Yeah. Let's just go right into what I call the cream of the crop, which is the new standalone detached ADU. And I talk about this a lot. A tenant wants exactly what a homeowner wants in this order. They want location, privacy, and amenities. And by buying in a good area and building a unit that's detached from the main house and then putting in nice products, you're going to get all three of those.
Yeah.
And a lot of the tenants that we serve are younger professionals that aren't married yet. They're not ready to settle down. They don't need a big house. So the standalone unit is kind of where we focus now because it's the highest demand product.
Right. So what's the advantage there is that's the most in demand from your tenant. I assume the disadvantage is there's a little bit more cost to build. Is that the $100,000 unit you're talking about?
Yeah. And that's the unit that we show how we build and we give away the plans for. But what we've learned over the years through a lot of trial and error and banging our head against the wall is that it's actually easier and more cost effective in the long-term curve of the yield to build new. And the reason is because we can pinpoint areas we want. We start with an affordable piece of property because we focus in on areas that have flat lots, that have alley access and have good infrastructure.
Okay.
So there's already a plastic sewer line. There's already a 200 amp service electrical panel that's been upgraded, and we don't have to move a bunch of dirt because it's flat. And then our plan set, we've already made all the decisions. We have a full list of everything that we're going to use over and over, and there's no variables.
Yeah.
We don't, pull up a floor and see a bunch of dry rot or termites. We don't have any curveballs when we build on a blank canvas the same product over and over. So people tell me all the time, well, Derek, I'd like to build an ADU, but I don't know how to do development. And they've flipped 100 houses and they tear them all the way down, to the foundation. And I wish I could put my brain in their head so they could feel how much easier new construction is. But it's just one of those things. If we haven't done it, we fear it.
Yeah. I have a series on my channel that I remodeled a 110-year-old triplex during COVID. And it was kind of a disaster in terms of my budget. I was over budget by 2 times. We had tried to redo we redid the foundation on the building and, retroactively putting in new foundation piers. And then my guy who installed it didn't do it correctly. We had to go to a second guy because he didn't do it correct. It was just nightmare. Like, you talk about digging into every single room and finding rotted wood. I think about that, and I think about building a 700 square foot new construction on a flat piece of land. I'm like, bingo! Like, there we go. Like, I know exactly what you're saying. There's a lot of steps in new construction, but you control the variables. And what I love as a landlord is I control the materials I use. I control the layout. I'm just, with an existing property, you have to kind of take what you got, and there's something cool about that. But you can design it from scratch and say, this is the best layout for a tenant. This is the best material to use. You can plan the maintenance schedule. That's really advantageous for a rental investor.
For sure, yeah. And we give all that away. We give our shopping list away. I mean, we build property management into our units. I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that people should consider is that when you start from scratch and you pick all the products, they're going to last a lot longer. So when you build a brand new house and you use products that are going to last a long time, you have so much less maintenance. Therefore, you can give your tenant a better deal.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, what can we do to put as little of our own time and money into this product while giving somebody a little bit, a product something a little bit under market rate?
Yeah, this is one of those like little told parts about the landlord-tenant relationship that I have a problem obviously with slumlords and that kind of side of our industry, but like it's a win-win. Like if you put in good products, a good layout, your tenant's going to be happy, but you're also going to have less hassle, less management issues. They're going to stay longer. I mean, there really is a virtuous circle of landlord-tenant kind of relationships when you do it well, you do it right.
Oh yeah.
I found that to be the case.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, and also everybody's worried about their ROI. There's also the return on time. And when you have new products that last a long time and less calls and less headaches and less turnover, like you're saying, everybody's happier.
Yeah. So it sounds like if we're going back to the templates, we've got like use an existing house, try to like carve off a piece that has the plumbing already there. That we didn't talk about it, but you could probably add a garage in there, a basement. It might be another one, not as private, not as many advantages as separate. And then you have this new construction one. Have you, and that's a whole nother world, but have you done any modular ADUs? Is that a thing? I've heard people talk about it. I don't have any experience with that, but is that something else in the realm of possibility here?
Yeah, it is. You know, modular units or off-site built. There's a ton of different options. What I've found over the years of doing this, and I tour ADUs all over the country, and we were just in Los Angeles, California, walking through pretty much specifically modular only units. And what I find over and over again is that they're not much cheaper and they're not much more efficient. A large piece of the project on a new development, standalone unit, is the site work, the infrastructure, water, sewer, power, gas out there. We've got foundation drains, we've got concrete being poured.
You got to do that either way. So
you're doing that whether they're building it on-site or off-site. And what I also see is a lot of tech companies in the industry right now trying to perfect this housing model. And I'm not going to name any of these companies specifically by name. But what I will say is we've had this model for years. There's manufactured homes.
It's called mobile homes.
What's nice about a manufactured home is they have a federal HUD stamp.
Yeah.
They're already approved at the state and city level no matter what. And for example, like a Clayton home, you can order a small one of those, have it craned in, set down on the site. But even a 50-year proven model from a company that people believe in isn't usually more cost effective or faster than building a simple design on site.
Wow. So we're not there yet.
Maybe
the science fiction will come at some point where, I mean, I could see a world where if it costs you $100,000 to build a stick build and they could bring in all in one for $50,000, including everything, that would catch my interest. I'd be like, okay, we got something but we're not there yet. We're not in those kind of cost savings.
No, we're not. And something we need to address really quickly is like people call me every week and they say, Derek, Home Depot or Amazon has this $40,000 ADU. Right. And I'll just tell everybody the cheat code here. Call the company of the product you're thinking you're going to get that's way below market value. See if you can get a set of blueprints, which you probably can't. But if you can, send those blueprints to your city, planning, zoning, and building departments, and see if they would approve those and give you a certificate of occupancy in your jurisdiction. And you might not even ever hear from anybody. Not that somebody's not going to nail this. Eventually, somebody's going to come up with this product. But even if you had a product that was amazing, built off-site, you could have it delivered for half the price. The legislation and the policy is so slow to react, it's going to be a while. The only exception to that rule is if you have, say, a flat property with good access that has some kind of overarching maybe campground zoning or RV park zoning where you could literally back up a truck and drop something off, plug it into 50 amp power, hook up the sewer real quickly and drive away. But most people that are looking into this strategy have a single family home property or some kind of residential zone without that commercial overlay.
Yeah, which goes back to kind of investing principles, which I agree with. When I talk to people about principles, like start with the location, number one. You want an in-demand location. And then this is the place where everybody wants to be, but they say, oh, you can't buy there. That's the place to build an ADU because your tenants are going to want to be there. It's going to be in demand, keep it rented. That's not going to be the place with a mobile home or RV zoning. Like my local town in Clemson, you can't build mobile homes or RVs anywhere in the city. That's pretty typical, I would think.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, very good point.
So I'm going to keep my eye out for mobile homes and modulars and 3D printed houses and all that stuff. That might come one of these days, but for us in our strategy today, stick built, getting plans, somebody from you, like you've been very generous with your plans, figuring out what zoning, what cities are the best places to start. I'm kind of checking that off the list, getting a blueprint, getting a plan. Another obstacle, which I know a lot of people are thinking is like, okay, that sounds good, Derek. Like I'd love to build this 100,000 ADU on my existing rental property, but I got to come up with $100,000. That's the reality as well. When you see people building these ADUs, short of them already having $100,000, which some people might have that, they could reinvest that. what are some other ways people are trying to figure out how to get that money to do that to build that ADU so they can have the rental property?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Coach. What I see most effective is some sort of financial stack using multiple incomes or multiple piles of money. A lot of those are going to be from equity. That's usually the place to start. But if you're a new investor and you just bought a house at 5% down, you have no equity, that might not work. Employer sponsored plans, a lot of them will allow you to pull 50 grand up to 50%. Mm-hmm. I tell people to look for private money, which is somebody in your family that might partner with you. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of really good products. One in particular, there's a company called Rentify, and they have a 90-10 LTV 20-year fixed rate second. So a couple years ago, I would have told people to do a cash out refi. But if you have, if you weren't asleep the last few years and you have a 4% rate on your primary, you're not going to go refi the whole thing at 7 today. But if you had to go pull a second at 7 or 8% to get that 100K and your payment was $800 or $900 and the income was 15, it's a no-brainer. Yeah. So the long answer is any way you can get the money. If it makes financial sense, the money should be easy to find, but it's usually from multiple sources.
Yeah. So you look at your existing equity and other rental properties. Maybe you can get a refinance there, get a HELOC on your primary residence. Maybe you can borrow 401k money. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but you could, so you stack up, pile the cash up like we always do in real estate investing.
Yeah. My biggest pet peeve, and I'm going to share this because it gets under my skin, is people say, oh, it sounds like a great strategy, but where do I get the money? And nobody poses that same question to, 75% of our investor field that does distressed property rehabs and BRRRRs. It's like the same way you would buy a house that doesn't finance, or the same way you would buy a house that needs cash to close because it's in distress. Yeah. I don't like hard money because I don't like debt that's expensive, but that's also another option. So when people ask me, my first answer is always like, well, the same way you would buy a distressed property. Like, you're going to need money to get into this business in most cases. And then the last piece that I left off on the other one, if it's attached, we have some good federal products. The 203K loan is a good product for somebody with very little money and no equity to be able to build an ADU, but it has to be attached to the primary house. And then to end that, the Biden administration is working diligently with HUD right now as we speak. And I'd say in the next couple of years, we'll have a federal Freddie Fannie backed product that will help average people build new ADUs. Yeah. So keep your eyes out for that.
Cool. Yeah, I think the answer, I get a ton of pushback on financing as well, not just on ADUs, but in general. So yes, but Chad, that sounds great. Yes, but financing is just a toolbox. Like, it's a toolbox that, just like you're building a house, you've got to add tools to your toolbox, as many as you can. There are lots of ways. If you have a good deal, I know people hate hearing this when they're new. If you have a good deal, you can find the money. And I always tell people, like, when I got started, I had $1,000. And my mindset I had was, I look at a good deal like a pie. Like, I live in the South. I like sweet potato pie, pecan pie. Now, let's say I was going by a carnival and they had like a pie on sale for $1. But I had no money. I had $0. Would I call up Derek and say, hey, Derek, like, you like pie, I like pie. Would you put up $1 for this pie and I'll give you 3/4 of it and I'll take a quarter? It's a really good deal. Like, Derek, would you do that?
All day.
Every
time.
Derek would put up $1, and the only question is, me as the pie finder, as the deal finder, am I willing to take a smaller piece of the pie to eat some pie? Yeah. That's really what it comes down to. And I tell that people over and over again, in real estate investing is the pie. It's how much money can you make from this deal? How much return are you going to get? And are you willing to get creative enough to go find a Derek, go find a friend? And if you don't have any money in your family, you might have to go to real estate investor meetups. You might have to talk to people. There's more money than there are deals. Yeah. I know this for a fact. There's more money sitting on the sidelines looking for a deal. And if you're ambitious, you found a good property that works as an ADU and it makes an extra $1,500 per month. And let's say it's marginal as a regular rental, but this $1,500 like makes it a pretty good rental. Somebody will put up the money. They'll partner with you. They'll put up the $100,000. So
every time
it's possible. I guess I want to give people hope on that. Financing is a big thing I talk about on my channel, trying to help people run the numbers and figure out the financing. But yeah, it's my pet peeve too. Like, don't stop yourself before you start.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you rather have a small piece of pie or no pie at all? Yeah. And one other thing I guess I should add is the best way. I've been building ADUs for 30 years, and the best way to finance an ADU build is to buy a house that already has one.
There you go.
And I forget that often, so I want to make sure people understand that if you buy a house that already has one, you can show up to the closing table with 5% down and get 30-year fixed rate debt on both of those houses. Yeah. And an ADU is probably probably a little cheaper and a little less competitive than a duplex.
Yep.
So just another tool for our listeners.
We've given people a ton. People should have a checklist now. If they had any doubt about whether ADU is an opportunity, I hope we've blown that out of the water. You've given some templates here. You were very generous on your website. I'm going to put links to your website, to your Instagram channel, all of that. So thank you for that. I want to close by, is there anything else you would add or advice you would give people who say, all right, I like this idea. I'm going to build an ADU. I'm going to go out there. I got a checklist. I'm going to do this stuff. What else would you tell them? This is kind of a final piece of advice to make that happen, to actually implement this idea that they're listening to.
There's so many good ideas in the real estate space. There's so many amazing content creators like you, Coach. There's so many strategies that work. And where I see people get stuck is self-limiting beliefs. They think they can't do it. They're riddled with fear and they don't take action. Yeah. So whether it's this strategy, whether it's building one of our ADU units or buying a quadplex and living in one, I would just tell people, don't be afraid to act. I mean, life is so short. We're in this tiny little window. Take action. Go be the change you want to see in the world. Don't be on your deathbed and have regrets. Just take action. Don't be afraid to take risk.
Love it. Good call to action. I love it. Again, where can people connect with you if they want to reach out to you, find the plans? And I'll put a link, but tell them also where they can do it.
Yeah, I'm on that ADU guy everywhere. Most active on Instagram and YouTube. You can go to thataduguy.com. You can go to our resources tab. You can see our lender. You can see our product list. You can download our plans for free. And I always tell people too that number on the top of the website, that's my personal number. When you call, just be ready to take action. I couldn't tell you how many people call me, and then when I answer, they say, Derek, I didn't think you would answer. So if you're going to call me or you're going to email me, all I ask is that you're ready to take action.
Brave man. I love it. I love the action you're taking. Tell them you heard about it on Coach Carson and that you're ready to take action, that we're action takers here around the small, mighty investor community. So Derek, thank you. This has been awesome. I've really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. You're one of the people that I respect the most and I follow, and I really care about your model and your message of like, you don't have to scale to the moon.
Yeah.
Just get to where you're comfortable and take the off ramp and enjoy your life. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Same here. Thank you.